Welcome to the Greener Way podcast, a show about people, planet, and purpose, and how investors and corporate leaders push forward in a complex world.
Welcome to the Greener Way. My name is Rose Mary Petrass, and I'm the senior journalist at FS Sustainability. Today, we're talking with Thomas King, Director and CIO of Nanuk Asset Management, whose career has spanned Olympic sailing to now funds management. We will discuss taking a sustainably themed investing approach in a changing world and why ESG is such a hot topic at the moment. Hi, Tom. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Can you start by walking us through the investment approach you take at Nanuk?
Certainly. So a group of us in Sydney started Nanuk nearly 15 years ago now, and it came out of a series of conversations during the middle of the GFC, talking about where there might be good longer-term investment opportunities at that point in time. And those conversations focused very quickly towards things to do with saving the world or things to do with structural trends that we saw as being inevitable to address a disconnect between population growth and economic growth, and even at that time already quite evident environmental issues and resource constraints, climate change being the big one, but not the only one. And at that stage, it wasn't nearly as large or tractable as it is today, but there was enough there within listed global equities to have a realistic chance of putting an interesting portfolio together. And so we started the firm, and we invest with a research-based fundamental investment approach in parts of the broader global economy that are related to environmental sustainability and resource efficiency. So it's a quite lengthy list of industries and technologies that are benefiting from the big structural trends we're starting to see happening in the global economy. And we invest in those areas with a pretty conventional valuation-based investment approach.
Okay, well, with all that you've said there and also the many accolades that your fund has won as an ESG fund, this would suggest that you're a firm believer in ESG, yet you've been widely quoted as calling for ESG to be banned. Talk us through your viewpoint. What's your argument?
Look, I think what you've just done is a really good illustration of the problem that we've encountered over well over a decade now, that I've just described in some detail what we do and why we do it without using the term ESG. And hopefully what I said was reasonably clear and logical, and for some people will be compelling and relevant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I haven't had to use the acronym ESG, and you've applied that label to us. And the problem is not that what we do can't be described as ESG. The problem is that the term ESG is used to describe a wide range of different objectives and approaches, many of which are things we don't do, and many of which are assessed or measured with metrics that are really not relevant to what we do. And the term, comes with a series of connotations which will be different depending on who's using it and what they think it means. And that creates a really, difficult, confusing environment for people to make good decisions about where they're investing their money. And we've been vocal over the last few months about this issue, and slightly tongue-in-cheek calling for ESG to be banned. And what we're really doing is arguing the point that everyone will be better off to the extent that we can avoid using the acronym. It's in no way a suggestion that the things that people use the acronym to describe should be banned or stopped. But that if you can't describe those things accurately and in a simple way without using the term, chances are you're going to have very confused conversations about whatever it is you're talking about. So our point has really been that advisors and people involved in the industry should try and avoid using that acronym when they're talking to clients, to understand what it is those clients are actually interested in. Is is their interest in having some of their capital allocated to companies doing good things? Is it in not having their capital allocated to companies doing bad things? Is it having their managers exerting influence through their shareholdings? Is it true impact investing? And if you can get down to understanding at that level without using the acronym, you've then got half a chance of aligning investments properly with what it is that people are seeking to achieve currently under this broad and kind of meaningless banner of ESG. And the situation's just got ridiculous now, and the industry's at a point where things need to change. And fortunately, I think a lot of industry participants are starting to recognise that and starting to delineate more clearly between different types of responsible investment. But I guess the biggest sort of illustration of how lacking in common sense the whole thing is the statistics around the amount of capital invested globally in ESG strategies, because the term has been extended as far as meaning any strategy that involves integrating environmental, social, or governance factors or considerations in any way in an investment process, which is effectively what active managers have been doing since the dawn of time. And so any active managed strategy is going to have some way of or likely to have some way of considering governance within investment decision making, and half the world's slapped an ESG label on what they do. So it's become a big problem, and I think it's time that people stepped away from the term and started being much clearer about what it is they're trying to achieve.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is that ESG is a bit of a distraction, or and perhaps that fund managers or investors should be looking at this anyway, and it's become a bit politicized. But many see ESG as a really powerful tool to be able to implement these metrics and try and improve things in the companies they're investing in. And your fund has been labelled as an ESG fund publicly. So if you could give me an example of, what is an investment that you would consider to be responsible in the way that you're describing, but steers clear of the actual ESG label or system.
We should keep in mind that I'm not suggesting that any of the things that investors are doing should cease.
Mm-hmm.
That people should be able to invest their capital, however they would like to achieve their financial investment objectives and their non-financial investment objectives. The point is simply that the use of that particular term confuses things rather than making them clear.
Right. I think I get what you're saying. You're saying that using the acronym ESG as kind of a catch-all term in lieu of any specific claims or metrics, that could be a bit dangerous because it could be construed as greenwashing.
Yeah, I mean, it could be construed as greenwashing, or more likely, given that ESG means different things to different people, a lot of people would make assumptions based on the use of the acronym that aren't correct. And I go back to, I guess, the start of the conversation. I described what we were doing. You said, and I can't remember your exact words, that we were an ESG fund, and it's true. We've won awards for being a good ESG fund, but to different people that will mean different things.
Okay.
And that isn't necessarily helpful for anyone. It's certainly not helpful for us to have expectations applied to what we do around aspects of ESG that we don't do. And it's of no use to anyone to assume that because we might have that label attached to us, in our case by other people, that we're going to deliver certain outcomes, and for that not to be the case.
Okay. Do you think that there's a danger that, making statements like ESG should be banned could hold back the the movement of responsible investing or sustainable investing?
I don't think so. What we're trying to do is open up a conversation, and the fact that people grasp onto the headline and want to talk about it is great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've certainly tried to be a little contentious for the sake of creating a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If we just went out there and said investors should use the term sustainable or something else, I don't imagine that people would be talking to us in the way that they are. But look, we've presented the concept in a variety of different forums on a couple of podcasts to a wide array of advisors,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of nodding of heads and not much pushback to what we're saying. I think there's a pretty wide recognition in the industry that there is a problem, particularly amongst practitioners of ESG strategies.
Okay, interesting.
If you talk to people at the UNPRI or the Responsible Investment Association of Australia, or within some of the advisory groups who focus on ethical or impact or sustainable investment, they're well and truly aware of the sort of the bigger picture problem here of terminology creating confusion.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely think I understand where you're coming from with this now. So if ESG isn't the right terminology or path to be taking, what should the industry be doing better? What would you tell our listeners that they should be doing instead?
If you're looking for a catch-all sort of term to describe what people are using the acronym for, the right one today is probably responsible investment, which is already a reasonably widely used term, but it's a term that shouldn't be applied to just simple ESG integration, which is where the widespread use of ESG as a label has become particularly problematic. Responsible investment does have its own connotations that investing in responsible investment strategies should have some element of responsibility to it, I suppose. But it's a little clearer. So that's where I'd go in terms of terminology. But really the broader advice would be that when we're talking about achieving non-financial objectives of a responsible nature with our clients, whoever they might be, that we talk about what those are in simple, plain English terms. Not investing in companies doing bad things, doing certain things, investing in companies that are doing good things or providing climate solutions or not with high carbon emissions or whatever it might be that we're trying to achieve. Because if you can't describe it in that simple way, you've really got no hope of finding the investment solutions to achieve those sort of outcomes. But once you do, it's much easier for everyone to be on the same page about what it is that what it is that people are talking about and what it is that people want to achieve.
All right. Thank you so much for the thought-provoking discussion today. We've been speaking with Tom King from Nanuk Asset Management. Tom, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I'm Rose Mary Petrass. Thank you for listening to The Greener Way.
Thanks for listening to the Greener Way podcast. If you liked today's show, remember to rate and review us on your podcast platform and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. Any feedback? Contact us on podcast@fssustainability.com.au. I'm Rachel Allen-Backus.
The Greener Way podcast is a product of FS Sustainability, a show about people, the planet, and investing in our collective future. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. The Greener Way podcast gives listeners access to information and educational content provided by discussing numerous financial sustainable options and our featured guests. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of The Greener Way are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. FS Sustainability operates under an Australian Financial Service License and the exemption made available under the Corporations Act 2001 in respect to any information or advice given. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the FS Sustainability website, fssustainability.com.au.